Today's guest is Dr. Liz Shuler, who is a transformational mind body coach, a yoga therapist, and also a Reiki Master with over 14 years of experience. She specializes in helping individuals heal, grow, and basically create a life that they love. So, Liz, thank you very much for being on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a rainy evening for me, but it's nice and cozy.
Well, good. I'm glad that you're going to be in a nice and cozy environment to dive into all of this in a public forum. So I think
Yep.
that's a perfect container to dive into this. So yeah, I mean, obviously you're just even from reading your bio and all of the things you're involved in, healing and transformation and helping people is obviously something you're very much um like a core part of who you are. So I'd love to just get a sense of like how did you get to doing what you're doing and what your journey has been like to where you're at right now.
Yeah. When I was little, I always thought I was going to be a veterinarian and I always had animals around me. And when my first horse died, I decided I couldn't do that all day, every day. So I was like, what else can I do to help people? And when I was 14, I discovered psychology. So I went full tilt into psychology. And then I moved abroad. So I got licensed as a mental health therapist in the US and started doing that whole shebang and moved abroad. And mental health licensing and things abroad is a whole different ballgame. So I started to move into coaching and doing more of my yoga and yoga therapy, which was another thing that sort of happened to me when I was in high school, trying to figure out what I could do to help myself and to help other people. And this whole holistic idea of not just treating the mind and not just treating the body, but having the whole person be treated is something that has always been really, really important to me. And so I just kind of jumped both feet in.
Beautiful. I love it. And it's one of those like you can only connect the dots looking backwards,
Yeah.
types of things. Like it's just like you lead, but it only makes sense when you look back on it. So I mean, I love that story. It's definitely reflective of my own and so many other clients that have been on here. So I mean, anything you want to add to that before we dive into the coaching bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was 11, I had a really bad concussion and gave me really bad whiplash. And that's how I started doing yoga, is I couldn't get the pain under control and there was nothing that any of the doctors could do. And so I started doing yoga, and that's the only thing that's ever helped me with that back pain and sort of those things. So it just, those really weird life events that happen that lead you to these paths are, I don't know, it's almost serendipitous.
Yeah, 110%. Well, it's like you never would have. I mean, you don't know, but like it's like
Right.
the impetus wouldn't have been there to like explore this as a way to integrate like this type of healing. And I agree with you. I mean, I don't know if you know about my history, but like I owned a brick and mortar weight loss center for 10 years before I moved into doing this space. So we
Mhm.
didn't do like rehab like directly, but there was a lot of
Right.
like movement things we would have to fix that came with its own sort of baggage and things like that. So yeah, integrating that whole thing and just looking at everything holistically, which is what we did from a lifestyle perspective,
Right.
is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I get the benefit of it. Not the easiest to communicate forward facing, but
Yeah. Right.
definitely effective on like the back end. So
Mhm.
110% aligned in that way.
Awesome.
Um, yeah. So anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, in that case, I'd love to dive into more of the like coaching segment and basically help support you, right? Because you're always supporting
Yep.
other people. So happy to provide that for you. So I know before we spoke, you had kind of gone through some of the preliminary like questionnaires and things like that.
Mhm.
And one of the things you wanted to dive into was, okay, well, how do I basically charge more and overcome this imposter syndrome around what it is that I do? So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So coming from the therapy space, especially in the US, it's something that is really, really underrepresented and is not very accessible for a lot of people. And so charging, even though I have my PsyD in clinical psychology, charging, anything above $100 an hour, which sounds like a lot. It sounds like a lot, but when you're doing, 20 hours of therapy and then you're doing 20 hours of paperwork and everything on top of that, it ends up not being a lot. But charging more than that isn't accessible for people. And so coming from that background and moving more into coaching, it's a little bit difficult to not think, well, so now I need to charge more because I have more credentials, I have more experience. We're doing something a little bit different here. But is that accessible? And am I worth it? It's those sorts of thoughts that come in the back of my mind when I'm thinking about what I'm charging.
Okay. So which one is like the louder thought? Like, am I worth it or am I accessible?
Um, so I think am I accessible is probably the loudest one for me. Am I worth it is kind of always there in the background. I've done a lot of work on that one, but I think the am I accessible one is probably the louder.
Okay. So if you're not accessible, then what does that mean about you?
I'm not accessible. If I'm not accessible, it means I can't help people, which is what I really, really want to do. And if I'm not accessible in the therapy, again, I'm going to keep going back to the therapy space because I've been like steeped in that. And that might be part of the issue, right? In the therapy space, if you aren't accessible, it is a cardinal sin, a cardinal sin. And I understand why, but it's always trying to strike that balance of I need to be okay with my finances, with where I'm at in order to be able to help people. But I also need to be able to be accessible so that I can help people. So there's always almost like a shame that happens in therapy circles if you're charging, over a certain amount. Like, oh, you charge that much. Are you sure you really want to do that? Is that, the thing to do? Are you accessible to your clients, or are you just for rich people?
Okay. So I understand the context and kind of the social pressures of where this belief is coming from.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting that that's where your brain defaults to when it basically asks, like, okay, well, what does it mean about you personally? What does it mean about Liz if you're not accessible?
Yeah. It means if I'm not accessible, then I'm elitist. I don't know, a problem. That's really what it comes down to. Like, it's a problem if I'm not accessible.
Yeah. And what's the problem?
One, that I can't get clients. If I'm not accessible enough, then I need to be able, I need to be able to
If
have
I'm
that.
not accessible, I can't get clients.
Yeah.
Okay. And what else? Sorry, and I know I cut you off. I just want to clear
No,
that
it's
up. But
okay.
yeah, what else was
Yeah.
there?
If I'm not accessible, I can't get clients, and and I am, elitist. Like, I'm only for the rich people. And is that really who I want to be?
Okay. And if you're only for the rich people, then what does that mean about you?
Uh, that I'm trying to think of the word for it because it's not,
Well, if you can't come up with the word, what's the feeling around it?
yeah, the feeling around it is, again, just that shame of like, you're not helping the people that really need the help.
So, by that definition, rich people don't need any help.
Yep. And that's the thing that I fight, right? Because I've also worked in international schools with very, very, very rich children. They have a lot of problems, the same sorts of problems.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, voicing that or hearing that in this container, like, what comes up for you?
I mean, it's something I tell myself all the time, and it's something that I've experienced firsthand, but it still just doesn't stick, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. So it's like you
Yeah.
intellectually understand that this is basically like circular logic that doesn't
Yeah.
get you anywhere. Okay.
Yep.
But the feeling
Hmm.
is one that doesn't allow you to detach or let go of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So what do you think you're not letting go of?
Probably that shame, because there's also the shame in the therapy community about being a coach rather than a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Partially because, coaching is a little more unregulated. It's kind of a wild west. But I think there's also that idea that therapists go through all of this education and they do all of these things, and then they charge way, way lower than what most coaches charge. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a shame thing based on not having enough and not, you know, so it's an outward projection of that shame, but it's very, very strong in the therapy community.
Well, it's an outward projection by the community because I
Yes.
understand the resentment. I've gone through all the
Yeah.
schooling. These coaches haven't. They're charging more. Like, of course, you're going to be pissed off, right? Plus, you have regulatory bodies that are looking. Like, I understand why they would be pissed off and why that would be projected.
Yeah.
The more relevant question for you, though, is why are you internalizing that as your own shame?
Probably because I have been steeped in that for the last, Jesus, 20 years almost. I feel like, since I
Okay.
was 16, I started, taking psychology courses, bachelor's level stuff. And so it's just been drilled into my brain.
And how's that working for
Not so great.
you? Yeah.
Not so
So
great.
I mean, and I appreciate your like open-mindedness to it, because especially somebody coming from like, obviously I don't have a therapy background. I use a
Right.
lot of therapy modalities
Yeah.
that I've just practiced and refined myself. So,
Right.
but and that's why I'm like just acknowledging you for like even being in this space, right? And I see like I saw this in fitness prior, and I saw like
Yeah.
I've seen it from different angles. So I just want to again acknowledge you for your open mindedness to even be here, right? Like I think it's a big testament to your willingness to actually change all of this. Um, but if you're looking at this, it's like, okay, so you're seeing the pieces, you're seeing the context, you're understanding how you got here, which obviously has its use.
Right.
So if we're diving into the shame, then what is it that you're actually ashamed of?
Like doing all of the jumping through all of the hoops, doing all of the things, and then being a coach, right? It's almost like, and this is not I know that this is not true, but what how it's talked about and looked at is that being a coach is so much less than, right? And so moving into this space, into the coaching and into the yoga and these sorts of things, it's almost like, okay, well, but you're wasting everything that you did. And that's, I get that from people that I'm still, I still work with in that space, and I still have friends and colleagues in that space. And that's kind of the feeling that you get from when you say I'm going to be a coach instead of
Right.
a therapist.
So what are you actually wasting?
In my opinion, I'm not, right? It's almost this internalization of that projection, because when you're with people who feel that way, and that is kind of your whole social circle and your whole sort of, like you said, container that you're in, I don't feel like I'm wasting anything. I feel like I'm using everything that I've been taught, and I'm using it in a way that might not be exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that scares people sometimes, because again, there's very strict rules about things, and I'm not always following those very strict rules. Not that I'm being unethical or, but yeah, it's just when you're in that space, it's very much directed, you're wasting this, you're not as good, you're not helping people as much, because it's just not, it's not at the same level.
Right. So whose opinions are more important now, theirs or your own of yourself?
Oh, That's a tough one because you have to have your network, right?
So you do have to have your network. I agree with you. You also have a
Yeah.
choice in what network you hang around in.
Yeah.
Okay. But what you're describing is like your actions are clearly choosing the network that keeps you smallest and reinforces the shame that you feel. Right.
Yeah.
And even from
Yeah.
the question of like, okay, well, whose opinion actually matters more? Like, if you notice, like, not once have you actually mentioned your actual clients. Like,
Right.
your whole brain has been centered around what do the authority figures and the peers
Yep.
feel and or perceive about me. Not once have I heard you say, I have tremendous breadth and depth of knowledge that gets quite foundational, transformational results for clients. The reality is that actually should be the only thing that matters, right?
You're right.
Like,
Yeah.
if doing headstands for 20 minutes got your clients the results that they all wanted, like, why would you then be like, no, you got to do this other thing if it's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's working, right? And I'm not saying this
No,
disparagingly at all. It's just
no, yeah.
to like shine the mirror of like how rooted you are in believing in wanting the acceptance of the group at the expense of what your own reality is showing you. So like you're at the client results and also my own needs being met
Right.
financially, fulfilling wise, aspiration wise. And also the fact that there's clearly a part of you that desires deeply to integrate all of these modalities and go beyond the confines of you know, basically your roots. So
Right.
I know that was a lot shown your way. So like what's landing, what is it?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that that makes a lot of sense. I think that brings up sort of imposter syndrome kind of stuff coming up for me. And also, just how I don't think I've realized quite yet how deeply that whole therapy uh, system paradigm just like puts you in a box and you have to stay in that box. Oh,
Right. But even that statement, you have to stay in that box,
right. Well,
right?
if you want to do therapy.
If you, okay, yeah, sorry, but
Yeah.
it sounded like you were talking about yourself, right? Like if I wanted to do, like I have to stay in that
Yeah.
box.
Yeah. No, it was more like when you're in that world and if you want
Right.
to be in that world and play there, like there is an authority and a slight misstep and you're out, it can be kind of scary to be going against, the licensing board or whatever it is. So
Right.
that makes sense why in my mind I would be deferring to these more authority figures when that's not what I have to do anymore.
Right. Then that was gonna be my next question is like, do you actually like what do you actually desire?
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I want to do more. I want to step out of that box. I want to use what I learned in the box, but I want to do more than that. And I want to be able to do better than that because I think it's pretty clear that psychotherapy has limitations and part of those limitations are because of the box. And yeah, yeah. But then, when you're told over and over again, if you leave the box, you're out, that I think that really contributes to that imposter syndrome and that feeling that, you're if you do something different, there's a
Right.
shame.
And do you think you're gonna thrive outside the box with a foundation of shame?
Oh, well, of course not. Nobody thrives with shame
Right.
as a foundation.
I know you know that, like both
Yeah.
professionally and intellectually. But the reason that I bring up that question is
Mhm.
so much of your actions and kind of your default worldview
Yeah.
are rooted in that polarity of I want to get out of this space, and pretty much you are like even just what you described at the beginning, like even if you just combined yoga and
Right.
therapy, that's outside the space. But then you combine that with like Reiki and probably all the other things that we haven't even talked about today, like you get something that is uniquely yours and nobody else's. So you're already playing out of that space,
Right.
but the shame is actually keeping you extremely small and pretty much disparaging the needs that you do have.
Yeah. Yeah. Shame. It's insidious.
Sure is. So if you're looking at all of this now and you zoom out,
Yeah.
how is this creating problems inside of your business?
It's keeping me inside of, I mean, with therapy, marketing, those sorts of things, there it's very, very limited what you can do, the things that you can say about yourself, the things that you can say about clients, the things that clients can say about you. All of it
Okay,
is
and so
is
just sorry to interrupt you. So
Mhm.
okay, I just want to make sure I'm having the right context to understand what you're saying. So like right now, you're not actually communicating or branding yourself or going out into the world saying I like I am an active practicing therapist. Like, are you leading with that,
Yep.
or are you saying I have a therapy background, but I'm actually a
Yes.
coach?
I have
Okay,
a therapy background, but I'm a coach. Yep.
perfect. Okay, so again, if you rewind this conversation, so I asked you, how's this creating problems in your business?
Yep.
Immediately, where your brain went to again was, well, as a
There.
therapist, you can't say testimonials, you can't provide this, you can't provide that. So how
Yep.
is
And
that
that
creating problems in your business from like the I perspective?
right. So I have a very hard time stepping out of that box. I
Yeah.
have a very hard time knowing where the line is, and because the line was very, very clear for me, and no, it's not. Right. So having all of those very prescriptive steps of, this is how you market as a therapist, this is how you talk to your clients, and you don't go out of that, it makes it difficult. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing things like this now, is I'm trying to come out of that comfort zone. I, as a therapist, I would have never done this.
Yeah.
Because
I
that
can
would,
imagine that.
yeah, for clients, or well, not for clients, I think it would be good for clients, for the licensing board, they would be like, why are you having somebody therapize you when you're a therapist in public? That's not okay, right? So I'm trying to like push things a little bit further, but I still hit up against that, oh shoot, can I do this? Oh, am I am I being bad? Am I doing the wrong thing? Especially with marketing.
Yeah. Got it. Well, again, I acknowledge and respect you for diving into the deep end with an experience like this. So, um, okay, if we make those things a bit more specific, right?
Yep.
So I'm stuck in the box of how therapy thinks I should market.
Mhm.
So get more specific now in terms of your own business. How is that creating problems or friction inside of your business?
Asking for testimonials,
Okay.
that's a huge no-no in therapy. um Doing like social media marketing, that's really, really difficult when you're doing therapy. And so I don't know how to do any of that. Nobody trained us how to do that, because you're not supposed to, right? And so learning all of those things and trying to implement that without feeling like I'm doing something wrong has been one of the biggest issues for me. And feeling like, if I ask a client, hey, can you write this thing for me, or just say how it's been working with me, that deep down in my gut, I'm like, oh, I'm breaking ethics.
Right. So
Yeah.
the guilt and the shame of
Mhm.
actually doing effective business
Right.
stops you
Yes.
from doing effective business.
Yes.
Okay. So let's bring that even like more clear.
Mhm.
If you can't do effective business, so you can't share the amazing transformations, if you can't put yourself out there, what actually happens to your business?
It dies.
Correct. So
Yeah.
there is no business.
Right.
And if there's no business, are you actually helping anybody?
No, no,
Right.
not on the scale that I would like to.
Correct. Right. So
Yeah.
again, like massive desires, which are beautiful, and obviously it wouldn't be there if you couldn't achieve it. But playing so small on the opposite end. Okay. And if we get even more specific now,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about your clients. So,
Yep.
and this will push up against the whole elitist thing. So, who do you think is more open and ready and willing to actually transform, somebody who pays a lot or somebody who pays little?
Definitely somebody who pays a lot.
Okay. So,
I
why?
mean, right. I see that in myself too. The more I pay for something, I'm like, I have to do this. I've got to get
Right.
something out of it, right?
And could it be possible that that's actually a benefit for your potential clients?
Yeah. I mean, energy in, energy out, right?
110%.
Yeah.
But then you're not accessible.
I'm not accessible. Yep. Yep.
Okay. So do you ironically see how that isn't just doing a disservice to getting your own needs met, but it's actually a disservice to your clients?
Yeah. Wow. All right.
And what's coming up for you internally when I reflect all this back?
It's I don't know why I never made the leap before. That leap
Which one?
from doing a disservice to myself, doing a disservice to clients. Because it's, in that world, it's okay to do a disservice to yourself. You can be a martyr, and that's great. Um, which it really isn't. Like, we all know that if you're not doing okay, you can't help other people. It doesn't matter what field you're in. But that's kind of what happens is people, self-sacrifice over and over and over again. So, but that doesn't help anybody. But I never made that leap of, I think, with the marketing and with business and making sure that my business is successful.
Correct.
Yeah.
And do you see how actually you are in those shoes right now? Like you are in the
Yeah.
martyr shoes right now.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, because that's what's expected.
Correct.
I'm doing what's expected, right?
And it's kind of like, and I don't mean this in a judgmental way, but more observational way.
Right.
Like misery loves company.
Right.
So you have a bunch of resentful professionals who are seeing other people succeed. They got two choices. Like you can either adapt and succeed yourself, or you can breed a lot of shame so that other people around you and then everybody can get together and complain about the exact same thing. And that's not
Right.
even unique to therapists. That's pretty
Oh no.
human thing, right?
Yeah.
Right. But you see how like that's not
Yep.
really working out for you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Oof.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's coming up for you with that?
I'm just I've also been, because I've moved abroad, all of these things. I am in a new country. I've just moved to Belgium 3 months ago, and I was like, okay, so I've been doing this kind of side gig coaching thing. I'm gonna make that into my full-time business, and then maybe I'll do like some psychology stuff on the side. And I am unable to get my degree. Like, they do an equivalence here. And they're like, yeah, no, your degree isn't equivalent to our degrees because you didn't do this one statistics thing, whatever. And I'm just thinking now that maybe that's why, because I'm not supposed to be doing that anymore.
110%.
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to be limited by the boxes that I've grown up in, but like let me try and see if I can get into this box just in case, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Yep. And I've been trying real hard, and I just keep hitting walls and hitting walls and hitting walls. And instead of like standing back and saying, why is this door closed to me? I've just been trying to like break it down.
Yep. It feels really good when you stop slamming your head up against the wall. Yeah. So
Yep.
what do you think would happen if you reallocated that energy towards making this work as opposed to staying attached to your old life?
Oh man. I mean, so much more energy for the things that I actually want to do. Um, and also, I guess I haven't thought of it this way either, but I do like free meditations and things like that. And so I'm accessible in different ways than I was before. Um, and it gives me more time to do those things that I don't have to be paid for, and not paying the money to the government to tell me that I can't do the thing that I'm asking to do.
Yep. Stop asking
Yep.
the permission to do
Yep.
what you have the skill set to actually do.
Right.
So I'm glad all this is landing. And then there's just one more kind of final theme that I wanted to dive into, but
Yep.
this whole idea of charging more.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, are you comfortable like with regards to diving into what you actually, you know what? It doesn't even matter. Like,
No,
what if
I'm
you
good with
just okay? So okay, feel okay. So feel free to share whatever you want to share, and then
that.
I'll dive into the point that actually it doesn't even matter. Like, what if you just tripled whatever you're charging right now?
Oh,
Okay.
so so I've already when I was doing therapy, I was charging €100 an hour. And I've already doubled that for my coaching business. So I'm charging €200 an hour for single sessions. And then obviously when I package sessions and programs and things, it gets a little bit cheaper than that with discounted rates and things. Um, and I'm getting to the point where I'm comfortable with that. If I charged more than that, yeah, I just feel the tension in my shoulders.
Okay. And what's the feeling behind the tension?
Like, am I that good? Do I deserve that much money? Am I, that good?
So if I took your resume and I took your name off of it, and then I asked you randomly, hey, do you think this person is like good enough to charge this much? Just based off of what you read on here, what do you think you would say?
No. Yeah, probably.
So
Probably.
kind of yes, kind of no. Okay.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I think my resume could be worth 300 an hour.
Okay. So now if you flip that around
Mm-hmm.
and what's like a major thing you have helped your client overcome? Or if there's a commonality amongst all of your clients, like, well, what do you help them overcome?
A lot of my clients have a lot of self-worth issues
Mm-hmm.
that hold them back in so many different ways that they don't even realize that is holding them back. Um, it's kind of like that quote, a fish doesn't know that it's in water,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I help them see the water and help them make choices so that they can do what it is that they actually want to do rather than what they think they should be doing, which is very similar to what we're talking about now.
There is, right? Coaches need coaches as well for this very reason. So I agree.
Yep.
Okay. So have you ever helped somebody make a major career transition or like overcome their self-worth issues so they get a promotion, for example?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. In that promotion, what was their increase in salary?
Um, it wasn't a promotion. It was starting a new business for themselves. Um, and moving to a different sector. And so I don't know for sure exactly how much, but it was definitely enough for them to, buy a house in a really nice area and, step up to that next level.
Okay. So we started this conversation by you saying, man, based off of my resume experience, if I had to charge $300 or whatever euros, like that is like a stretch and a half. But if you flip that around
Mhm.
and you have a client who, because of your work, moved into a space where technically they have uncapped, unlimited amount of potential, how much they make. But
Yeah.
whatever, okay, that's a very idealistic thing. But they made enough from that move that they moved to a new area and bought a new house.
Yeah.
How is that not worth $3,000, $5,000? Like if I told you, if you pay me $5,000, I'm gonna give you everything you need in order to move into a new area, buy a new house, and that's the first year, and then after that, you get to like own your magnificence and make however much you want to make.
Yeah.
So as you shaking your head, what's landing for you there?
Yeah. It's definitely worth it. It's definitely an investment in yourself, which is why I, do my own coaching and therapy. So I shouldn't be so hard on myself.
Well, not just so hard on yourself, but it's like look at the lens through which you're viewing your marketing, pricing, charging issue. You're viewing it from the lens of, am I good enough to charge this much based off of my own paradigm?
Right.
Meanwhile, the people that actually need to determine if it's worth the trade-off for them to do this is actually your clients.
Right.
So it's actually extremely disrespectful to assume what somebody can or cannot afford and or trade off, etc. Like that is
Right.
a part of their life experience. And in general, like let's just say we're going to stick to that $3,000-$5,000 range. It's basically like, would you be willing to forego buying a high-end fridge in order to eliminate your mental stress?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
so what? Okay, well, what's landing for you with that?
Yeah. I mean, no, you're 100% right. And that's one of those things that I wanted to, get away from, get out of that box. And I just haven't quite let myself yet, I think.
Okay, and if you say like we end this call and I ask you
Mhm.
to do or speak in the way that I just spoke in these examples,
Mhm.
what comes up for you?
So you're asking me to,
So the next prospect you have, you triple your prices and own it from the perspective that I just shared, like your version of that.
yeah, I think it would be difficult just because I still have a little bit of that imposter stuff going on in my mind. But I also think that it would be something that I I could do. And as soon as I did it, I would probably, get over that hump. I think it's something that for me, actually experiencing those things is what moves me out of it.
Yeah,
So I just have to do it.
yeah, that's fair enough. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, like we can't do that
No, yeah.
all on one call as much as I wish we could. But in
Right.
terms of just like mapping out where you're at, what are all the things standing in your way? Like, does that feel complete for you? Or is there still something left outstanding?
No, no, I think that's great. Yeah, I was still a little uncomfortable with what I was charging, and I'm really not feeling that now. Um, and it was really good to hear you say like that's disrespectful to the people that you're serving, because I think that's what I needed to hear. It's not all about me. It's about the people that I'm working with and what they need, and if that's what they need from me, then that's, it's an investment and I can give them what I can give them.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Liz, in that case, thank you very much for allowing yourself to be witnessed in this way. And if you want to just close us off and let everybody know, who's the best person to find you, where they can find you, floor is yours for that.
All right. Yeah. I have a website, innerevolutioncoach.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Inner Evolution Coach. And if you want some of those free meditations I was talking about, you can find me on Insight Timer, Dr. Liz Shuler. I've got a library of free meditations that are really, really helpful.
Beautiful. Love it. Well, as always, we'll include that in the show notes. But Liz, thank you very much for being on, and for everybody else listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you so much.